Okay, so online at the class website, you'll see that I provided a PDF for copyright-free images. Let me take a look at that. I've got this printed out. For more information on Creative Commons, see Creative Commons website. You can click the link on that. Stock photo websites. So what are these? What's going on? Well, what does copyright-free mean? What does Creative Commons mean? What does a public domain mean? Essentially, if you're a photographer, if you're an artist, if you are a creative of some sort, and that includes if you've created pantomimes or any of those things, if you've written something, in the United States, the copyright, in other words, the ability to say whether or not it is reproduced, falls to you. And there are some caveats to that. So you get the final say in most circumstances. However, if it's for educational use, then there are slightly different laws. If it's fair use, for example, it's a short clip, or if somebody's just talking about what you did. So, for example, you did a great painting. Somebody goes out and looks at that painting. Then they write about that painting, and they have a small photo of that painting, and they go, look at this painting. It looks great, et cetera, et cetera. You can't go later and say, I don't want you reproducing that tiny image. It's not going to fly. That falls under fair use. It's pretty common sense stuff usually. Occasionally it gets kind of tricky. There are often artists trying to push the boundaries of what it means. For example, Andy Warhol did this Camel Soup can, and Camel Soup said you can't sell these because you are mass producing this Camel Soup can and we own the copyrights on the can's look and feel. We don't want you placing these around our competitors' offices and that kind of stuff. So Andy Warhol was sued. He went to court, and the judge said, hey, look, you can make variations of these, but you can't actually just keep reproducing the exact same Camel Soup can. He said, fine. And he ended up doing all of their flavors of soup. And it turns out that with the exception of the title on the word, it's a different can every time because it's the same can, but it's technically different because they've changed what it is. For example, the clam chowder Camel Soup can looks pretty much the same as the tomato soup Camel Soup can. And let me just bring that up on good old Firefox. It's hard to find these days. Here is a gallery of his Camel Soup cans going on. Now you see if Google Images will play nicely. So notice we have the cheese and the tomato rice and the beef. So this is fine by what the judge said. You know, you got even though to the normal eye these are the same can, they're not technically the same can. So he was a pioneer in that, pushing what it meant to have copyrights and all that. And so that brought up more questions, such as, well, what if you want other people to use your stuff? How do you go about that? Well, you can say that it's entered the public domain. So copyright lasts for a specific amount of time. There was the Sonny Bono Act, which arguably illegally infinitely extended copyrights, but that stopped just recently. Disney was the largest lobbyist to keep it going forever, but if you look at Mickey Mouse from, say, 1950, here we have a 1950 Mickey Mouse going on. And let's look at a Mickey Mouse from, say, 2017, just a few years back. Even when they tried to recapture what Mickey looked like, you can see that it is not, in fact, the same Mickey. Now, hopefully, this is the other thing about copyrights. Notice the little audio that played for just a second. If that's copyrighted still, the YouTube algorithms will detect that I had a 2-second clip of it and potentially mute my entire audio. So that's just an attempt to enforce copyrights. And you can see where that gets complicated. So YouTube will be like, oh no, he played 2 seconds of audio. Is this fair use? We don't know. We may flag it. We may take it down, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't want that to happen, if you want to share your music or if you want to share your stuff, what you do is you enter into the public domain. So I keep kind of bird stepping around this. The idea of the public domain is after copyright's expired, anyone is free to use it. So, for example, let's say I took a photo in the late 1800s. and it was just a beautiful photo of, say, the Chrysler Building. I think that was around in the 1800s, or if not, then a horse. Let's just say a horse. And people still use that horse on postcards and motivational posters today. Well, that's fine. My copyright would have expired, so anyone can use it and make money off of it. And so the Creative Commons came up, which is pretty clever. Let's say that I do some work and I go, I don't actually want this work to be copyrighted. I want anyone to be able to use this. Well, I could get like a lawyer and I could get it entered the public domain, but that would cost me money, and I'm trying to do this cool thing for free. So what you can do instead is go to the Creative Commons, and they have already set up exactly what you need. It's been a while since I've been to their website, and they pop it up. And you go to their licenses page, and then you say what you want it to do. So Creative Commons 0, high licenses, master terms of service, and all that good stuff. If you read through this, Creative Commons 0, CC 0, means that it's automatically in the public domain. You have said people cannot copyright this later, saying, hey, this photo of a horse, the original is mine. If they put clever text on it, remixed it with a bunch of different images that they took all of that, at some point it does become their work, but that original horse image is not theirs. So you can keep having that used, which is pretty great. And they've changed this a bit since it was last year, but you've seen these little CC things around and about on the internet. Those are the Creative Commons. And they have different ones, and you can create your licenses on here. I think under the Share Your Work lets you choose your features of your license, which I think is quite brilliant. So for example, do you want adaptations of your work to be shared? In other words, if somebody took your work and altered it, should they be able to share this as well? Or do they have to share it for everyone, meaning that the next person down the line could take it and alter it as well? You get to choose those things. You get to ask those questions, and we'll tell you all of this stuff, which is great. So I really do love the Creative Commons website. Do you want to allow commercial use of your work? This means that it really is just getting over to the Creative Commons CC0. If you say anyone can use it, but for non-commercial, you get like this little $sign, and it's the Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License. So in other words, you provide this, and now people can go and to read about it on the Creative Commons to find out what the licensing is. In other words, it's not entirely yours anymore. It's now available for a license, which is really cool. And you don't have to pay a lawyer to do any of that. The Creative Commons paid the lawyer to do all that, which is really, really good. So why did I talk about all this for the last 7 minutes? Well, the reason is pretty simple. Throughout this entire course, I'm going to keep pushing this. Use copyright-free work or images that you own the copyrights to. So if you take your own photos, if you generate your own stuff, all those, I want you to use those. I don't want you to go to like Pinterest, that's still around, and pick off like, oh, that cover of that book looks great, that was printed like last year. That's not an image you're going to want to start with. That's copyrighted to someone else. Now, the reason I want you to do that is that I want you to be able to use this work for whatever you want later. So if you decide that you want to print these postcards, for example, through a website that does postcard prints, more power to you. Feel free to sell those. Maybe you got like a mediocre grade on it and you're kind of mad, and you put it up and you start like selling hundreds of thousands of postcards. Well, that shows me, doesn't it? Congratulations. You were able to do that because you used the copyright-free images, the CC0 or public domain. Either one of those works. And the PDF that's online has links to all of these so that you can go through and kind of peruse those. It's also possible to use certain search engines to search for copyright-free images. I found that can be kind of risky. Sometimes they'll be mislabeled. I usually find it better to go through sites that I know for sure are going to be copyright-free. Now, is this always the case that you have to do this? Absolutely not. And a lot of people who go through the whole college art experience encounter an entire different world when they get out into the commercial art world. People will take all kinds of other properties for inspiration, but after a while you get the feel of how far you need to push away. So for example, if you're doing an acrylic painting or an oil painting, that's your painting. We just saw with Andy Warhol's cans of soup that can of soup is Campbell's, right? Like they own the copyright on all this, but that reproduction of it, this, I believe, was this print, a lithographic print? I can't recall off the top of my head. That reproduction of it is Andy Warhol's to do whatever he wants with. He can sell that. He can make postcards of this, whatever. Well, the judge was a little unclear on that, wasn't he? For example, you'll see the Andy Warhol soup cans around and about place by place. That might be in violation of the original ruling, but it's hard to say, isn't it? I suppose that's some more research for the interested listener. So in brief, when you're getting these images together, please use the copyright-free images and start looking through those. Start downloading them too. Get those saved on flash drive, an external hard drive, whatever. Start building your own archive of images that you can use as references to go through. I've yet to meet an artist who doesn't have either a box of cutout magazine clippings or a folder on their computer just full of cool stuff that they saved throughout the years, or just some DVDs that they kind of rewatch to see, get the idea of what to do. You start collecting these things. We're kind of magpies in that way. It's great in the digital art realm. You don't have to worry about losing track of magazine clipping and never being able to find that again. You can usually just Google search it again, or if you've saved it and backed it up on, if anyone still uses DVDs, if you've burned one of those guys, then you can have a backup of that, and that's quite phenomenal. And don't forget, do make backups of your work as you go. While we're talking about that, I tend to reflect back on earlier assignments, and in other words, you may want to take a piece from an earlier assignment and use it in a later assignment and build off your work. If you have a backup of that, if you didn't just throw it away because you needed the hard drive space and like your Mac laptop or whatever because it's an older model without as much memory, what have you, these flash drives, I recommend them from Amazon. Try to get a known brand like what do I have sitting over here? A SanDisk, for example. SanDisk's pretty good. Keep in mind that flash drives have a limited life. So if you keep those little thumb drives, they call them sometimes, the USB drives, pen drives, depending on where you are in the world, the little ones that you plug in, I could just bring them up. They have a limited lifespan. And so if you fill them all the way up and you keep like dropping files in and out of them, they're likely to blow out eventually, and then they're unrecoverable. Home Depot. I don't want to go to Home Depot. I want to go to Amazon. There we are. I'd stick with known brands because they work better. I've never heard of this brand, for example, so why would I want to use that? SanDisk, however, I've used frequently. And you can see that these aren't too expensive. Your student account, you should be able to get a free Prime account with a student email address. Careful not to get charged for that. Look into that. You can also get these at Target for a reasonable price, but you'll want something. If you have like a rich aunt or uncle who wants to support you in your endeavor as computer graphics, look for an external hard drive. Instead, as I type out instead, whoa, I mistyped hard drive there. And these Western Digitals are pretty solid. I have a few of these floating around. Like the USB 3.0, 2 terabytes are pretty hardy. They come in on Amazon at about $60. If you have the free shipping, that's great. You can find these at Costco if you have a Costco membership. I got one. It was 2 terabytes. No, I think it was 3 terabytes actually, but it was around the $80 mark at that point. That was just a few weeks ago. These, I feel, are better for your work in some ways because you can't blow them out. You're good for several 100,000 rewrites on a flash drive, generally, unless a bad eject happens, in which case it could corrupt the entire thing. Got to be careful on that. If you open a Word document directly or an Excel document directly off of your flash drive, your little USB flash drive, not your external hard drive, but the USB flash drive, if you open those types of files will constantly rewrite so that you can have a backup in case something goes wrong. And they will start really reducing the lifespan on these. I've seen a lot of students use the same flash drive for like 4 years, and they're writing papers straight off of these things, and they just blow up. And if they don't have a backup of this stuff, it's all gone. You can try cloud services as well. Being a computer scientist, I don't particularly trust the cloud because I know it could just go away at the drop of the hat, depending on what happens to the services. The external hard drives are great, except if you drop them while they're running, they can be destroyed. If you expose them to a large magnet, you can have a problem like that. I'm coming up on the 15-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this video. I think we've discussed why why I want you to use that copyright-free stuff enough, and we'll get into looking at some of these images. All right, see you next video.